name of radical Islam.
Once inside, he immediately began firing at people.
Are we failing to connect the dots?
That's a suicide bombing in the United States. Why isn't the story being presented in those terms?
Or is the threat overblown?
Someone's actual ability to do harm needs to be taken into the equation.
A Fox News investigation.
Are we getting complacent?
Jihad, USA, homegrown terror. Reporting from New York, here's E.D. Hill.
When al-Qaeda attacked us on September 11, 2001, most Americans were caught completely off guard. 6 years later, are we now getting evidence of a new kind of jihadist threat? We begin in New York City, where Police Commissioner Ray Kelly thinks we are.
We're in a new ballgame, and we have to think like that.
June 29, 2007, New York City on high alert.
It's not a drill, it's not an exercise.
Dozens of patrol cars, lights flashing, sirens blaring, hit the streets of Midtown Manhattan in a massive show of force.
Tonight's deployment is tailored to what happened today overseas.
In London on this day, 2 cars packed with explosives were found parked outside a popular nightclub. The aborted plot was not, however, carried out by an international terror organization like al-Qaeda, but by a group of local Muslims merely inspired by Osama bin Laden. The London operation, as New York Police Commissioner Ray Kelly well knows, was part of an ominous development in the war on terror, homegrown jihad.
We are, to a large extent, going after the kind of homegrown terrorists.
To combat that threat, Kelly is using a one-of-a-kind, high-tech counterterrorism force.
The whole idea of this counterterrorism aircraft is to provide us the ability to cover areas without being detected. We are 4.8 miles from that spot. Most likely nobody will notice us.
On the ground and highly visible are the NYPD's Hercules teams, heavily armed cops patrolling the streets and subways. Surrounding it all is the NYPD Harbor Unit.
There's a lot of eyes and ears out here. They can all get to us over marine radio, real time.
We've had 6 plots that have been thwarted since September 11th.
Are they all different shapes and sizes, or is there a fairly similar plot line and set of characters?
They aren't all alike.
5 of those plots involved actual al-Qaeda operatives planning to release cyanide in the subway, collapse the Brooklyn Bridge, and bomb targets like the New York Stock Exchange. But then there is the 6th plot, which the NYPD thwarted in August 2004 to bomb the Herald Square subway station, where 8 busy train lines intersect right below Macy's department store. The 2 plotters on the right of this surveillance photo, and shown here with an informant casing the station, were not members of any international terror group. 19-year-old James El-Shafei was born in the U.S. and lived in New York. 22-year-old Shahwar Mateen Siraj had come to America from Pakistan 6 years earlier. Both were convicted of terror-related charges. El-Shafei was sentenced to 5 years in prison, Siraj 30. We've had al-Qaeda hit us. Then we've had a lot of people that aren't quite al-Qaeda. Is that a greater threat, perhaps, than the main organization itself?
Well, they're clearly a threat.
So the question for Commissioner Kelly is how many more like El-Shafei and Siraj are out there, ready to hatch their own plots against America? And can law enforcement adapt to this new challenge?
But as I say, we don't want to fight yesterday's war.
In August 2007, the NYPD issued this report, Radicalization in the West, the Homegrown Threat. Some experts have called it the most extensive, in-depth analysis of this growing menace. It concludes that terrorist attacks are being planned and all too often carried out by ordinary, though often troubled, individuals who have become jihadists. They're not directed by al-Qaeda, but they are inspired by the same vision of violent jihad. The report concludes that in many ways, this is a more dangerous threat. That's why the report recommends a controversial strategy which the NYPD has adopted, using surveillance and informants to identify would-be homegrown terrorists as early as possible even before they're radicalized, and arrest them early on. That's what happened in the Herald Square case, and the NYPD used the same methods in 2007 to disrupt another plot, this time to blow up fuel tanks at JFK Airport.
Charges were filed today outlining one of the most chilling plots imaginable.
But much of the media was skeptical, dismissing the scheme as one that would never work.
Of course, it's very important to look at potential problems as they failed to do before 9/11, but not at all these imaginary plots.
But Kelly says the suspects who are awaiting trial took concrete steps to try to make their plan a reality.
They went to Guyana, they made several trips, they went to Trinidad. I mean, clearly, there was more than just a notion here.
Paradoxically, Kelly's success at disrupting plots in their early stages may be one reason for the skepticism.
Are we getting complacent?
I think the public is getting complacent. We can't afford to be complacent in law enforcement, and I don't think we are.
It strikes me sometimes that you're in a damned if they do, damned if they don't position.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, just imagine if the 19 hijackers on September 11th were arrested on September 10th. How would that have been characterized?
So are we up against a worse threat than we want to admit? Homegrown terror beyond New York City in the heartland when we come back. Three months after 9/11, another suicidal pilot crashes into a U.S. skyscraper. Americans are relieved that it wasn't Al-Qaeda, but did it foreshadow a new kind of terror threat? January 5th, 2002, Tampa, Florida. Teenager Charles Bishop crashes a single-engine plane into a local skyscraper, a scary echo of the September 11th attacks. Authorities assured the public that Bishop was just a troubled kid with no ties to Al-Qaeda, and that's true. So little was made of a note he left behind.
He did make statement expressing his sympathy towards Osama bin Laden.
It wasn't a big thing and he was a troubled soul, but he did it to advance this ideology.
Journalist Mark Stein writes often of the West's failure to recognize the threat of radical Islam. He sees the Bishop case as sort of a canary in the coal mine, a warning of how the idea of jihad attracts all sorts of unstable individuals.
And they do things in the name of radical Islam.
July 4th, 2002, Los Angeles, California. Egyptian-American Hasham Mohammed Hadiyet kills 2 and wounds 4 others at the ticket counter for Israel's national airline in LAX before being killed by a security guard.
I heard about 5 shots go off in rapid succession. The gunman was shooting at the El Al ticket counter.
Even as we learn that Hadiyet had a deep hatred of America and Israel, we are again assured that this is not really an act of Islamic terrorism.
We don't have any indication that this individual acted in an effort of an act of terrorism.
October 2002, Washington, D.C. Beltway snipers John Muhammad and Lee Malvo go on their notorious shooting spree, killing 10 and wounding 3 others. For almost a month, terror grips Maryland, Virginia, and D.C. Few even consider the possibility that the killers might be Islamic terrorists.
I have no indication that this is other than an individual or individuals who are randomly shooting in different locations.
But it turns out both Muhammad and Malvo were Muslim converts, and authorities found pictures drawn by Malvo with clear jihadist themes. Mark Stein was one of the first commentators to speculate that the shooters would not be white male loners, as profilers insisted. He's still nearly alone in stating flat out, this is a case of homegrown Islamic terrorism.
The Washington sniper case is the classic example of how we haven't really got a way to frame the struggle we're in, because we say, well, he's not a card-carrying member of Al-Qaeda, as if it's something, it doesn't count unless you keep your membership up to date.
As you will see, the list of homegrown plots and attacks will get longer and longer. As it does, more and more voices will join Stein's.
We smashed the spider and its legs crawled out.
Military historian Victor Davis Hanson says after coalition forces decimated